right, just give me a second. We're setting up. All right. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Amen. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste, osaya anakitwaya, Ohio, I see you. Manut, namaste, kamsamida, habari gani, jambo mimini Kofi nina fraku katana nwewe, bakwatav, barakalad sham yachava, kwam yashlel teda, achet azayan, and Kofi, head of the Servants of Christ, Mashallah. Hey, hello everybody, I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servants of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We are very appreciative to be in your presence today. Thank you for joining us again, spending some time with us. And we really, really do appreciate your presence. Hopefully you're doing well. Hopefully everything's going well for you. Prayerfully you've woken up and had a great start to your day. Praise God. Prayerfully you are in your word. Prayerfully you are staying steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the will of Yah in your life. And I'm grateful to spend some time, break some bread, so to speak, some spiritual bread, and spend some time with you guys on this rising. Thank you guys for coming over. Some of you coming over from Early Rising Bible Study Session. We have it posted on Facebook, and we have the recording on Patreon. And if you'd like to be able to get more information about what we talked about, feel free. I'll try to see if I can post it later on TikTok for you guys as well. And we thank you guys. We're getting close to the mark. We're getting close to time to meet up. September 29th is fast approaching. Those that are going to be meeting up with us in Cali, don't forget we're going to be meeting up September 2nd, September 3rd. So pray for us as we're going to be on the road traveling quite a bit. Really been in the midst of it already. So going to be traveling quite a bit already. Pray for us, and we pray for you. We give all honor and praise to the Most High. We give all praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. I don't have as long as I normally would. Not sure how long we'll go this rising. So we'll try to hang in there as much as possible. But prayerfully, you'll get enough of a word today. Today, I want to speak from a different perspective. So prayerfully, this will bless you in the way that we're going to be going this rising. But once again, we thank you guys for being on. Today, for a theme, if you will, and thank you to the moderators. I bow down. Thank you for what you do, to ministerial staff, all the stuff you do in front and behind the scenes, to SOC, to Lottie and everybody. If you agree with us, disagree, whatever the case might be. If you're coming on because you got a notification, if you struggle to find us, even when we're hidden from plain sight on TikTok and other platforms, we appreciate you for spending some time with us today. I am sweating a lot. Please forgive me. It is what it is. Been very busy as of late. But we praise Yah and we thank you guys. We appreciate you. We honor your presence. So today, what I would like to talk about, if you want to join us today in some further conversation, is before we get into that, let me say hello to everybody. How you doing, Sister Carla? How you doing, Sister Nadine? How you doing, MIT Stephen? How you doing, Sister Betty? How you doing, Teflon, MIT Jelani, Minister Tamara, Romac, Keith, Sister Monica, Pearl, Sister Sylvia, DB, Paradise Found, Sister Knight. Everybody, we appreciate you. Infinitely Me, Minister Infinitely Me, praise you, Miss Lita, Sister Arena, everybody who's on, Overcomer, we appreciate you all. Thank you so much. How you doing, Sister Rhea? Everybody, we appreciate you so very much. How you doing, Brother Jermaine? And thank you for the love. All right, today for a theme, how you doing, Sister Tianya? The theme for today is I feel what is not statistical. I know it's not something that's got oomph, but prayerfully you'll get it. I feel what is not statistical. Thank you for the love. I feel what is not statistical. It might not be in the stats, but I feel it. As the Holy Spirit was revealing some things to me, and I was studying, and I was getting ready for the day. How you doing, Sister Sherry? I began to realize, how you doing, Sister Juanetta? I began to realize, how you doing, Sahara? And thank you for the love. That a lot of people keep trying to change the story. That's why we have to be careful about his story versus our story versus the story, the actual story, correct? Um, a lot of people want to argue because, well, show me the stats. Show me how I'm benefiting from corruption. Show me on paper. Prove it to me on this. But there are some things that I feel, whether it's in my spirit, whether I feel because I live it every day, whether I feel it because something in my life is heavy on me, whether I feel it because it is Yah's will, whatever the case might be. There's things that others might have to cease for statistics, but I feel it. I feel what is not statistical. Now, can stats back up what I feel? I can find stats to actually help out with that for those who are stuck that on the stats. It's got to be stats. It's got to be something that I can say is this. But the reality is usually when people are using stats nowadays, people are using it to be able to try and say that they're better, that they're right, that they're righteous, that they know better, blah, blah, blah. But they don't want to actually talk about feeling. Matter of fact, a lot of you are used to saying, whether you're on the Republican side of things or the Democrat side of things, you're used to saying something like facts over feelings. But what if feelings are factual? I'm going to say that again. A lot of people have been raised in this thing and have been talking trash with people and have been telling them how you don't have to worry about, or you guys are worried about too much, or you're too much into your feelings. So they say facts over feelings, but how somebody feels is factual. How you doing, kid? We've broken this down before. However, allow me to repeat myself and utter this again. Just because somebody might feel something and it might not even be based off of what is correct, it does not mean that they do not feel that way. I feel what is not statistical. It might not match what you think should be statistical. It might not match how you're doing, MIT Tracy. It might not match what you have discovered, what you read in your books, what your group of people, what your collective says it is, but it doesn't mean it's not reality. Right? If I were to give you, I know this is very esoteric for some, and so I promise I won't just make it mystical. We'll make this practical, right? But there is, there are some things that I feel, and therefore I know them to be true because I feel them. We could talk about, yes, I feel the Holy Spirit, and I listen to her, and so therefore I'm guided differently than people who don't feel her. And so they'll talk about statistics where I have the Spirit to guide me. We could talk about I feel love and warmth, and you can't really statistically give that to me, even if you try to scientifically tell me what it is. How you doing, Sister Raina? There's certain things I feel, but there's certain things that are felt, and really that's why empathy is one of the most necessary things on the planet. That's something that we don't often use and utilize, but it is one of the most necessary things on the planet. How you doing, Jen? And I feel some things that are not statistical. So as much as I appreciate a lot of the teachings, not all of them, but a lot of the teachings of somebody such as Jordan Peterson will say some stuff every once in a while because of the culture that he comes from, and him trying to uphold Western belief systems. And even if he doesn't believe in them, uphold certain Western theologies and things of that nature. He will keep saying things like, I need you to give me statistical data. Don't tell me that I benefit from what you don't benefit from because you don't have statistics to back it up, which is not necessarily true. However, what if what I feel is fact? What if you tell me that you guys don't deal with any kind of oppression or don't need to come out of it, but I feel psychologically, my people feel something and they haven't had a chance to have psychological evaluation. They've just been told that they need to be better. Right? That's facts. Now, the problem is when it comes to feelings, since many people don't have empathy, we cannot express or even discover or even go through what somebody else feels to see how much fact is in what they feel. Many people are using statistics today to deny what you feel, right? Women say, we don't feel like we get respect. So here come the men to make sure that we tell the women that we have all the data to tell you why you're not correct. When the reality is if you would listen long enough, and those of us who are married can even look at some of this stuff, and we look at what our sisters and our mothers and our wives and our daughters and our aunties and our nieces and our grandmothers, etc., our family members, our community members, when we see them go through certain things, we can see what they feel. Thanks for being part of the community, Courtney. Appreciate you. How you doing, Black Steel? See, it's one thing to keep talking about, give me the statistics, but when I see, watch this. I've talked about this before. My wife, when we were, earlier in our relationship, I would always be wondering, why is she talking to me in the middle of the night? How you doing, Yehuda? Why is she just calling me randomly, this and that? I mean, I appreciate it, but I was like, and it seemed like she'd just be on the phone. But my wife, being a woman, being out in the middle of the night and me not being around, my voice is something that makes her feel safe. Now, statistically, you might not be able to put that together, but me be empathizing and saying, I see how she feels, helps me, right? How you doing, MIT Jenny? Right? I feel what is not statistical. How you doing, Sister Iska? I gotta get in contact with you. Y'all pray for me. A lot of stuff going on with us personally, and even with us all over SOC, but we're gonna make this work. I feel what is not statistical. I feel what is not, what you can't write down sometimes. I can't explain to you the stats of walking on water, but I feel as if it's possible. I can't explain to you by stats all the time what the Holy Spirit does. I can write some stuff out, but for sure, I feel some things, right? There's a nurturing thing. Your children are not raised off of just stats only. Some people are trying to do that, but see, people are trying to come up with statistics to tell you why your child doesn't know if they're a boy or a girl. But there's a feeling that comes over them that even after they get the surgeries and things like that, there's certain things, even physically, they feel that their body reminds them, even when they go through whatever, that they are not what they're trying to become, because there's sometimes you've got to feel it before you write it. Matter of fact, any of your books that you like to read, somebody had to feel a certain way about it before they wrote it. Matter of fact, when I'm writing certain things out, it's easy to type, but sometimes I like to write things out by hand because I can feel it better as it escapes the pen, as it escapes the pencil. Right? You have to feel empathy, right? You have to have certain intuition even before you start the institution. You have to have an intuition about certain things. I feel what is not statistical. And here's the problem, is that a lot of people, they don't take time to empathize. And you've got to realize that people who will not empathize are people who will not help. People who will not regard your feelings as righteous will not do something. Watch this. Somebody will tell me that I am wrong, as somebody who believes in the Bible, to defend somebody going against racial discrimination, right? And then they'll tell me that I'm wrong because it's, statistically speaking, you don't care about humanity because you'll talk about racism, but you will not talk about LGBTQ plus in defense of them. They try to bring up statistics. We're going through the same thing. You went through oppression. We go through oppression. We have a community. You should have a community. You should realize our oppression, etc. And while I would tell you that I disagree, I think the first thing you should realize is my feeling for you. Right? How you doing, Stephen? How you doing? What do I mean? Well, you should recognize that my feeling for you is first as a human being. Before you give me the statistics to tell me why I hate you, or because you see me with the Bible, or because you see me open up something, you should first recognize how I feel. Ask me how I feel about you rather than putting me in a box because of a statistical category. Because if you would ask me how I feel, I would tell you that I feel for you as a human being. And even though I think you're probably going through a self-discovery mode, more so than a sexual mode, I would tell you that I first comprehend that you are a human being, and all of us are trying to figure out humanity together. Even if we don't always agree together, we are all going through this thing called humanity together. And first things first, if you're going through something, I want you to know that I feel for you. Right. And oftentimes people don't want to hear that because then they hit you with the statistics. Well, if you felt for us, then you would go ahead and do this. But then I would ask the next thing, why is it that you feel that it's that when I say race, I'm wrong. I'm okay to defend race, but then you feel that I'm wrong to say that even though you might be going through your own human experience, I don't have to necessarily defend that belief system. Before you bring me the stats, let's talk about why you feel the way you feel. How you doing, Sister Sage? Or how you feel, or what taught you to feel that way. Somebody might not be catching. I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly. Let me try and say it this way. Why is it that when you will ask me the question, right, you're not okay with recognizing, you don't realize that you recognize with me that race is something that I believe to be sacred, right? Because I believe you cannot change somebody's race. The word you use for race, we know race comes from something else, but what we use as far as the term race, right? How you doing, Keith? What your race is does not change. It is sacred. You were created that way. What your race is, it is sacred. You were created that way, right? If you are a white Irish lass with red hair, then you are created that way. It is sacred, right? The reason why I defend it is because somebody tries to tell you you're not great because of your race. The reason, right? If somebody were to say, I'm a white Irish lass, but I can't identify with that because I don't feel great about being that, the first question I would ask, the first thing I would do would not be to uplift it and uphold it and say, go ahead, be a Black sister. The first thing I would say is, what is it about what you've been taught about yourself makes you feel like you are not enough as your white Irish lass, red-haired self? That would be my first response, is why do you feel like who you are is not enough? Why do you not celebrate who you are? That would be my first response. It wouldn't be, let's find statistical data to tell you why you're wrong or why you're right. It would be first, why do you feel that way? Right? If you told me that, hey, I don't like, I don't like the fact that my body is like this, and everybody makes fun of me being thick and voluptuous and stuff like that, and I'm gonna just go ahead and get surgery, and I'm gonna look different. I'm gonna make myself look like Sarah Plain and Tall. My first response wouldn't be, all right, if that makes you feel better. I would say first, why do you feel how you feel now? What has caused you to believe that those hips, that your nose that's wider, that your hair that's thicker, that your walk that's naturally sways a certain way, that your hips that are naturally the way, that your Coke bottle frame, why do you believe that that's not righteous? If you were to say, I don't like my skin color, I'm going to go ahead and bleach it, my first response wouldn't be, okay, do you, and make sure that you fit into society. My first response would be, why do you feel? Why do you feel like you need to be lighter skinned? There might be some things there that are there. Her experience, sure, of course. But just because it's right, watch this. And I'm not trying to conflate the two, so hopefully it doesn't seem like that, right? But hopefully you get what I'm saying in the context. If there's somebody who says, I want to be on drugs because the drugs gives me a high and I can escape the world, I would say, I get you. I can comprehend it. I can empathize. I don't sympathize with it. I don't want to experience it, but it is your experience that does help. But question for you, we need to figure out what's going on, because that's a symptom of something else. It's not as simple as, because you do this, it should be supported, even if it makes you feel great. We need to figure out why you feel, or what has caused you to go into this feeling of the drug, right? And so just because it's your experience doesn't mean that that experience is actually based off of something that it should be reality, or that is ultimately something that's going to help you. Right, your affection, this inordinate affection. Why do you feel like you are not getting security and affection? Two of the six basic human needs. Why do you feel insecure and you're not getting affection, and you don't feel respected? And even sometimes sexual gratification and other things you're not getting, whatever. There can be a lot of different things. So what is it that we can do to figure out what is the real foundation of this house of addiction that's being built upon the foundation? And how you doing, babe? My wife is on. The Honorable Maya. Please check her out on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. He's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Love you, babe. Thanks for being on, as always. Right? So I would, because watch this, we do something called culture to habits. Culture basically, and this is something I extended upon off of Dr. Leah Africa. He came up with the first 5. We just added 2 more, and we use these a lot. See, culture to habits goes like this. Your culture affects your beliefs, and your beliefs affect your emotions, and your emotions affect your feelings, and your feelings affect your mood, and your mood is going to ultimately affect the effort or energy you put into something, and the effort or energy becomes your habits, or directly, lead to habits, and prayerfully your habits continue a culture that came before you, or maybe your habits will change to make sure that you're not dabbling in the culture that came before you that you shouldn't. So watch this. No, because people always do that. Your emotions and feelings are the same thing. But watch this. So my culture is what I believe ultimately, right? Or culture is the environment even, because nobody's raised in a vacuum. Everybody's raised with something affecting you in some way, shape, or form. So my culture affects my beliefs. What you believe is basically based off of the culture you've been in. Whether the culture has supplied you with something that's positive or supplied you with something that's negative, right? But your culture is going to inform your beliefs. Your beliefs are going to inform your emotions. Now, emotions are not the same as feelings necessarily, because see, emotion, literally the word motion is in it. Emotions are physical. Feelings can be physical, psychological, spiritual, but emotions are physical. When you have an emotional response, whether, watch this, if it's in your brain, I'm not talking about your mind, in your brain, right? In your brain, the motion of things happen. So at one time in my life, I was considered to be clinically depressed. What does that mean? That means that something very wild happened in my life that affected me. And I began, because there was so much negative happening, I began to believe and put into the negativity. When I did that long enough, I started to have this habit that formed, right? But when I did this long enough, my brain started, the synapses of my brain started firing differently. So there's parts in your brain that when you're thinking positive, certain things fire in a certain motion. And when I'm dealing with things that are negative, they fire in a certain motion, right? And so what happened is that the emotions started controlling the brain. They started telling my brain, so I could see that it was a nice day outside. Everybody would come up, hey, it's a great day today. It's nice. Look at the sun up. And my brain would fire a negative response because of the culture I was in, the environment I was in, and the beliefs that I started to have as far as, man, it's never going to get any better. And so I would say, oh, it's only a matter of time before it rains. Okay, yes, you're all energy. That's fine. You all have a frequency, you have a vibration. As a musician, I know about vibrations and stuff, especially some vibrations you want to be close, sometimes you want them to be away. All those different things. Yes, everything has a vibration, your energy, but energy is physical. Spirit is not physical. Now, once again, this is a culture. So if this is not the culture that you're in, by all means, you have every right to disagree, right? I'm here to represent a culture, to represent a branch of humanity, to represent a branch of people that have a certain belief system, not just biblically only, but I'm talking about even where my people come from, because I actually can say this is where I come from my father, from my mother, these parts of the planets, etc. And so where we are, so where we believe, right? Because a lot of people, even in Afrocentric stuff, right? When we hear people saying, well, what's up, God? Peace, God. In African culture, there is no God, because God is different than Elohim, and Elohim is different than Anansi, and Anansi is different than Onyon Capone, and Onyon Capone is different than a Yorija, and a Yorija is different than a Netcher. Somebody will try to tell you in somebody else's culture where they appropriate things, they will say God means everything. Mm-mm. In Kemet, we didn't have gods. Gods and Netchers don't operate the same. Right? So if you think God is law, you're coming from a culture that says that God is law, but I don't worship God, and I am not God. I'm not a God. Now, if you are one, then you got to figure out the Germanic terminology and stuff like that that's influenced your culture and influenced, therefore, your beliefs. And now that gives you an emotional response. But as far as where the culture comes from, in Kemet, they never had gods. They had Netchers, and even Netchers could not be everybody. See, Netchers could only be a select group of people. Just like if you have kings and queens in England, not everybody can be a king or queen. And only they can be, and they are supposed to not only be somebody who worships God, but they're supposed to be somebody who does what? Who is after, or who is supposed to be a representation of God on earth. That's why the king of England or the queen of England doesn't say, I think that I am pleased with you. They say we are pleased with you. Why are they saying that? Because they're trying to say that they are a representation. But once again, we don't realize where that comes from, because that comes from Roman Catholicism. Because in Roman Catholicism, the Pope is supposed to be not only the person who's in charge physically, but he's also supposed to be the physical embodiment of the Christ. So they believe that the Christ is the Pope and the Pope is the Christ. They work together as one, because you're seeing the physical version of Christ, but he's talking as far as the spiritual version of Christ. So guess what? The King of England, when you go back to King Henry VIII, he became what? The first Pope, right? He left Roman Catholicism. He wanted to marry as many women and do as much stuff as possible. So he left Roman Catholicism. What did he do? He said, I'm going to become the Pope. And as a FU, as a middle finger to Roman Catholicism, he started to change what was in Latin and in Greek and in French, and he started changing it to English, which is why English Protestantism is there. So anybody who's into Protestantism, your Pope is, in fact, the king. You said that matters. Okay, well, once again, it's your belief system. You have every right to believe what you want to believe. I can only represent a culture. That's why I say, like, if somebody tells, for example, let me come outside of my culture. If somebody tells me they're a great Buddhist, then I say, well, why do you can't be part of a sect then that believes that Buddha continues to come back? Because the Buddha said he would never come back. He said he realized who he was. He said he was an elephant spirit. He said he was going back to another realm, and he would never return to the earth. And yet, if you keep believing in something, then you can't believe in the Buddha. Now, if you want to make up your own thing and therefore deviate from the culture and have a bastardized version of the culture, you have every right to do that. But that's not the culture that the Buddha would have came from. That's not what he even believed. How you doing, Minister Shante? That's not what he taught. That's not what he said. That's not what he did. So if you're going to say you believe in his teachings, but won't even believe what the Lotus Sutra says in the first chapter, right, of the sutra, excuse me, then you're just doing what you want to do in the name of that culture. And that's fine, but why not just tell people that? See, we'll fight for things because we're trying to find statistics to put it there, but you can't even feel what you're supposed to feel because you don't have the right culture. Therefore, once again, culture informs our beliefs. And if I didn't say so earlier, how you doing, Sister Dejan? How you doing, Sister Arnona? How you doing, Trina? Thanks for being part of the community. How you doing, Fire Specialist? I don't know if I said hello to you yet. How you doing, Prince? Everybody who's coming on. Did I say hello, Minister Shante? I think so. So how you doing, child of the 12 tribes? You said the Lord did not save us because of cultural misunderstanding. He saved us because of his good name. No, where does the Bible say he saved you because of his good name? First of all, the word good means God. That's a Germanic term. So you're talking about a different culture anyways. But where does the Bible say that? Matter of fact, what's the first word of the Bible? I don't know if I have my markers with me. I think I do. I got my whiteboard with me today. See, I feel something because I live it. And the statistics are the things that people give me. Your statistics going to have to back up what we as a culture feel, because what we as a culture feel is because of what we in the culture live. So let me just show you something, right? It's easy to say that. We just throw that in. He didn't save us because of culture. The kingdom has a culture. You can't be in the kingdom of heaven and have no culture, right? Impossible. You're trying to do something that doesn't make sense. How are you in a kingdom and you don't do what's in the domain? The kingdom is the king's domain. You must do what the king does. That's how the culture operates. If you don't want to operate in that culture, you're going to miss it. He didn't come to save us because of culture. He came to give you back the culture. He came that the captives would be made free. You're captivated by other stuff. He came that you would have sight returned to you. He came so that those who were dumb could speak. He came so that those couldn't hear could hear. He came to give you culture. What are we talking about? But because we want to do this without culture, we have bad beliefs. And because we have bad beliefs, we have bad emotional response. And because we have bad emotional response, now we're not feeling right. That's what I was trying to get to earlier. But let me go ahead and put this on the board. Let me just show you something culturally. Once again, see, we're talking about stuff, but we don't even know how to recognize what these people would have said within the culture. So allow me to go ahead and forgive me. I got a huge whiteboard, so it's going to take me a minute to turn this thing around for y'all. But let's go into the culture, right? First word of the Bible is not in. It's not in the. It's not in the beginning. In English, you probably should even just say in beginning, because in Hebrew, they didn't have a word for the. But I'm going to write out this first word. See, and so we have a lot of people who are even talking about the Bible, but how are you going to have a proper biblical response? And you don't even know what the first word is. So this is the first word of the Bible. If I were to try and make it as phonetic as possible, I don't even know. I might have to let me try and do this a different way. Like I said, this board is huge. Let me try and see if I can do this a different way so you guys can see. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to reverse it so you guys can see it on TikTok. Give me a second. Let me mirror the image. Okay. But see, we don't even know the first word. So we're having an argument without even knowing what the first word is. So how are you going to argue the word and you don't know the first word and you don't know what it actually means? So I'm sorry. Hopefully you guys can see where you are. I can't see that well. I think you can see that, right? So yeah, okay, I can see. So Barashat is the first word of the Bible. You were saved because of the first word, but you don't know the first word. So you're speaking words, not even knowing the first word. Everything in the Bible starts on this first word. You don't know what it means though. Right? Barashat. Matter of fact, the first words of the Bible are Barashat, Bara, Elohim, Achamayam, Adat. So in beginning, created Elohim towards the heaven, which is going to be Hadaklar, which you call firmament, and towards the earth. Because everything he does is towards something, moving towards something. The word at, or what they're using, the word the is really, we don't have a word for the, but they would have said at. Barashat, bara, alacham, at shamayam, at arat. In beginning. Now, what does that mean when we actually write it out, though? These phonetic sounds come from the aleph bit, or the aleph bait, right? And this is why we teach this to our children when they do homeschool and stuff with us, including Shabbat school with us. They have to know where they come from. They can't be like us to where we're arguing stuff and we don't even know where we come from. We're arguing about stuff and we're trying to tell people what their culture is, and we don't even go to what these people, our people, even believed in the beginning or in beginning. So let's write this out. Now Hebrew's right to left. So we're going to go the opposite way. But you got to know, right, what it is that you're talking about. And you might not know. And even for some of you, especially some of you who've never taken any classes or haven't really studied, because this is not modern Hebrew, this is the original. This is the language that Adam would have spoke to Enoch. This is the language that Enoch would have spoke to Noah. This is the language that Noah would have spoke to Shem, and Shem would have spoke down to Avda, or what you call Hebrew, and Hebrew would have spoke to his son Pelag, and Pelag would have been able to pass this down. And we keep seeing it passed down to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob and to Judah, and we keep seeing it passed down to Boaz and to Obed and to Jesse and to David and to Solomon, and we see it passed down even to the Christ. Right? But Barashat means what? It means the son who comes out the right family, who's one with the Father, becomes our head, being destroyed by being led by the Holy Spirit to the cross. Thousands of years before the Christ would show up, it was already recognized in eternity that we would need a savior because we wouldn't get it right. And therefore, the one who created us, our husband in the spirit, didn't want to see his wife go out like that and gave her an opportunity to get herself together so that they could become one when the son comes back for his bride. Right? In beginning, in Hebrew, means the son who comes out the right family, who's one with the Father, becomes our head, being destroyed by being led to the Holy Spirit, to the cross, to the top, to the place that it's finished, the last character of the Aleph bit. That's why he's not, in our culture, he's not the Alpha and the Omega. That's Greek culture. In our culture, he's the Aleph Atav. He's the first and the last. That's why John chapter 1, verse 1 says, in the beginning, or in beginning, in the word in beginning, but in beginning, this is culture speaking. This is a bar right here he's giving me. He says, in beginning was the word. The Son is known as the word as well. So in the beginning was the word, the bit. The word was with Elohim. The word was with the Father. The word was Elohim. The word was Elohim. Matter of fact, the Son, if you know how to say bar in Hebrew, you don't need this aleph. You could just say B-A-R or B-R. But the Son, even is bar, right? Which the Son and the Father are one, who becomes our head. He says the same was in beginning. In the scroll, in the first word, in the scroll itself was not called Genesis, it was called Parashat as well. It says the same was in beginning. So he's talking about culture. So once again, we have people that are arguing and saying things, and you don't know the culture. You don't even know how to write it out. It's hard to discuss culture with somebody, and they're not willing to go through the process of getting to a place to where you not just can statistically recite it, but you feel it because it's what you live every day. I can bring up statistics to prove that we're in a wicked system, but live long enough and you'll start to feel certain things that don't feel right, correct? You see that? But we're arguing over things because you are looking for statistics, but watch this. Whose statistics? I call myself God because, in Africa, we're gods. No, you're not. They don't have gods in Africa. At least not the people you're trying to talk about, because most of y'all, when you talk about African, what you call theology, which is not even an African name either, but what you call African theology or African ways of looking at spirits or deities or deists or gods, etc., Euregias, Netchers, they don't even have those over there. They didn't have those over there. They didn't have those things introduced to them until they were colonized, or until they had trade, or until the Moors started, teaching people African principles and people started taking them and appropriating them. You never had those things. So your worship of God is a direct result of somebody's purposeful cognitive dissonance and planted in your mind and in your life to ensure that you would never have anything tangible. So when somebody says, "What's up, God?" You are God. An African person never would have believed that they were God. Am I saying that African people could not be pantheistic, that they couldn't have multiple things that they worship? Of course they could. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your concept of God is a Eurocentric concept because it's a Eurocentric word. It's like we said yesterday, I comprehend. My wife is royalty. My wife is by my side. My wife is a leader. My wife is a ruler. And I don't even mind sometimes saying my wife is a queen, but you have to be honest with it. Like we said yesterday, if you look at how Europeans look at the word queen, they didn't like queens to be over them, not just because they were misogynistic, which we could talk about that they were, sure. But the reason why they didn't like queens is because if you look up the word queen, Quean, where you get your word queen, Queen from, the reason until Bloody Mary, who becomes the first queen after King Henry VIII, who we just talked about, where she tried to correct what her father did and brought him back to Roman Catholicism, and therefore her sister, Queen Victoria, behind her, had to bring it back to what it was. Was it Victoria or Elizabeth? I can't remember which one. But whichever one, right? The reason why Mary being the first female queen was such a big deal is because queens were always considered to be bad, because the word queen in English, it means, now not in other languages necessarily, but the word queen in English in a lot of European nations, the word queen meant whore. I'm not saying our sisters are whores. I'm not saying that women are whores. I'm telling you the word queen meant whore because you think that their kings were righteous and trying to do things for the community, but their kings ran through women. They had multiple wives. Once again, King Henry VIII, Queen Mary, or Bloody Mary's father, literally started Protestantism and made himself the Pope of it and left Roman Catholicism because the Pope was running through women, but hid it. He was running through women and wanted to keep doing it. The Pope told him he couldn't do it because it was a bad look. And so therefore he got mad and started a whole religion so he could have as many queens as he wanted. So they don't look at their queens the way we look at Nefertiti, the way we look at Tai, the way we look at Nzinga. They don't look at them like that, the way we look at Khalifa. They don't look at our queens the way that we look at Harriet Tubman. They in their culture, queens are different. That's why it was such a big deal for them to make Queen Mary their first queen. Because in their culture, their mind is, how do you take a whore and make her the ruler of a nation? Was she a whore? No, but that's how they looked at their women. See, culture is extremely important. Because you're talking about the statistics show that she was the first queen. But watch this, the feeling about her is different because they didn't look at her as a wife, They didn't look at her as a potential mother. They didn't look at her as somebody who was, matter of fact, she was considered to be a bastard. Because her father, King Henry, when he started messing with other women, he had to deny her so that if he had a child from somebody else, that child could be on the throne. So he made sure he gave her some land, but he basically put her in a place where she was isolated. She was not raised as his daughter. She was raised as a bastard. Towards the end of his life, when he got sick, he allowed her to come back around and stuff. Right. And they didn't even want her to become queen. Matter of fact, she had a younger sister from another relationship. And then she had a really, really young brother. The really, really young brother was the one that was made to be king, but he ended up getting sick and he didn't survive. So then she became the first queen. It was not his intent to have her be queen. And the only reason why she got to be queen of England was because that there was a fight still, because they had just became Protestant. A lot of people have been Roman Catholic their whole life. And so now they wanted to go back to Roman Catholicism, half of them, and half of them wanted to stay Protestant. So she brought them back to Roman Catholicism. That's why they made her queen in the first place, because they were like, we should have never left the Pope. See, but once again, you don't know how the people what? Feel. You only look at the statistic if you're not careful. And today, we have a lot of our sisters who feel a certain way, and we still don't value how they feel. We keep trying to come up with statistics. We keep trying to say stuff. See, you should go ahead and just get with as many men as possible. You should just realize that you should do whatever you want. You should just be thankful to be in a man's presence, because I'm a high value man and you as a woman are automatically going to be of lower value. I'm this one that's supposed to protect you and secure you. And that's just your position. That's your role. And that protection and security means you just, when I say jump, you say how high. If I say bark, you bark. If I say lay down on the ground and let me kick my feet up on you and watch the game, that's what you should do. And you should just be happy. That's how people talk about women, because they don't care about how women feel. And what's happened though, is that whatever you give, what's good for this is the saying, the expression, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? I'll say it again, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That's what y'all be saying. So guess what? You kept disrespecting her, and now here you are disrespected. And they turned around, they started disrespecting you, and so guess what they feel? They feel disrespected. Because nobody cares how the other person feels, or when two become one, nobody cares how both of them coming together should feel. You just want to keep giving statistics to validate why you should mistreat people and not honor their feelings. You want your feelings validated. Matter of fact, the only thing you use statistics to is to validate your feelings, but you keep saying facts over feelings. But the fact of the matter is that you wouldn't use those statistics if you didn't feel a certain way. See, if you would get out of even if you think you should get out of your feelings, fine, get out of your feelings long enough to discover that out of your women, when they go missing, nobody looks for them. You should feel a certain way about that if you really felt how a father, how a male role model, how a king, how a mansa, how an emperor, how somebody who actually takes care of his family feels when one of your family members goes missing and nobody looks for him, including your own people. You should feel a certain way about that. When your woman comes to you and they say, look, we're tired of you trying to say that you are the same as us, and that you have periods like us, and that you have babies like us, and that you can breastfeed like us, and you are not us. We're tired of it. And rather than telling them that we have statistics to be able to tell you that you don't know what you're talking about, maybe we should honor how they feel, because you want people to honor how you feel, but you don't want to honor how they feel. I know somebody doesn't like it. I know this is going to give me a lot of likes and a lot of views, but it is what it is. You should honor how somebody feels. See, if I walked a mile in this thing called manhood, and I start telling you that this is how men feel, and this is how men I talk to feel, and this is the things that men tell me when they'll cry in front of me but won't cry in front of you, and when men are telling me, and this is how they feel about the fact that they got to be over a family, and nobody gets to know their darkest and deepest crevices of places that they need to be nurtured, and nobody will nurture them, but they still got to find a way not to be cracked, because they're the foundation, and if the foundation is cracked, then the whole house is going to fall apart. And they keep telling me how they feel, but they can't go in front of you and tell you how they feel, because you got a bunch of statistics to tell them why they're not manly enough. How I feel. What are we talking about today? I feel what is not statistical. Sometimes you can't write it out. How you doing, Sister Shima? How you doing, Sister Barbara? Sometimes what I feel, I can't write it out for you because I live it. My life is an epistle. Do you not know you are a living epistle? How you doing, Brother Vargas? I feel what is not statistical. Sometimes you can't write this out. Sometimes you got to feel it. Sometimes you got to listen to what somebody says they feel. If you would listen to how somebody feels, you might be able to help fill. There's some gaps, and somebody needs you to fill in the gaps, but because you can't feel the gap, and you just have statistics to tell them why they need to get up and keep moving, they can't get better. This is one of the things that happens with our diaspora a lot. Everybody keeps saying, you know what, rise up. You know what, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. That's what we had to do. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who you guys want to bring up to validate your stuff, he said it is a cruel joke to tell a man to pull himself up by his own bootstraps when he has no boot. How do you tie laces together? What is the point of tying laces together and you have no boot hole, no lace holes, no boots to put the laces through to feel like your foot is secure? What sense would it make to walk over glass and say, I don't need the boot to walk on the glass. Just go ahead and give me a string and I'll tie the string around my foot and I'll be fine. It doesn't make sense, does it? Something needs to support you so that when you walk, there are certain things that you should be supported in so that you don't feel the glass. How you doing, Mr. Biscuits? Oh, we caught it there. See, maybe you caught it there. It's a terrible thing to have a boot, to have a lace, and somebody say, tie the lace up to tighten the boot, but you don't have a boot. And then they say, well, use this boot that you don't have and use the laces that we gave you so you can tie some things up and go ahead and walk on the glass. You'll be all right. How you doing, Copper Wolf? You'll be all right. Just walk on the glass. How you doing, Dion? You'll be all right. Statistics show that you have a lace. Man, you guys talk about being poor. I mean, there's LeBron James out there. There's Michael Jordan. Magic Johnson. You guys act like you don't have anything. I mean, you act like white people don't like black people. I mean, I have black friends. Statistics show. But this is why you have to have the Most High anyways, because there's people who are not going to validate how you feel. So if they're not going to validate how you feel, guess what you got to do? You're going to have to learn how to have something invisible to still make sure that it supports you so that you don't have to feel certain things when you walk, because people aren't trying to provide you the boots. What I feel is not always going to be statistical. I can find statistics to back up a lot of what I say, but there's going to be times like I give receipts quite a bit. Hey, go look in this chapter, go look in this verse, go look in this book of the Bible, go look in the Apocrypha, go look at Enoch, go look in this, go read Oluwata Hikuiano, go look at the Constitution, go look at this, go watch this video, go watch this on YouTube, go watch this Netflix special, go watch the documentary, go read these books, learn this Kemetic language and be able to translate and right? I can give you a lot of that stuff, but at the end of the day, there's got to be something that you live long enough that you feel it. If I want to give you a word, if I want to give you a word of encouragement, but I'm sick, the word's not going to be able to get to you if I don't feel well. I can have all the statistics correct, but if I don't feel well, then you can't get it. If I'm having a day where I'm very scatterbrained, the word might come up jumbled, not because I don't have the statistics, but because what? Because I'm not feeling it. Just because somebody's born of a mother and father doesn't mean that the father's involved in their life. They might statistically have a father, but it doesn't mean that they've ever felt the father's love. How you doing, Pinky? Right? Just because I feel it, or just because I can think about it, just because there's statistics to back it up, doesn't mean I feel it. No wonder our communities are messed up, because people keep talking about we have community, but we've never felt community. You're saying feeling connected to, feeling it, period. Feeling connected to it, feeling its embrace, feeling its warmth, feeling attachment to it. Sometimes even feeling, like, for example, I can talk about growing your own food all day. Statistically, that's correct. But when you start growing your own food and you eat it, and then you eat it for a couple weeks, and then you try to go back to somebody else's food, you enjoy it, but you don't enjoy it the way you enjoy your own. There's a different feeling. Statistically speaking, we can put food in your mouth, but when it's your own food, it feels different. We like to say like it hits different, the genuine. Yeah, it being genuine. It's a different type. It hits different, like we say today, right? I forget what verse we were talking about the other day. I think it was when we got into, was it Matthew chapter 20? And we talked about everybody being paid the same wage, no matter if you worked, the first hour, the third hour, the ninth hour, the 11th hour, and then they started paying everybody backwards. If you worked in the 11th hour, they gave you the penny. The ninth hour, they gave you a penny. And then wait a minute, the fifth hour, they gave you a penny. And the third hour, they gave you a penny. And by the time they got to the people who showed up at the beginning, they paid them a penny. And he said, what? And so once we realized, he's saying, look, I'm the one who's with you. We already acknowledge that this is what the pay is going to be for you to work for me. And no matter when you work for me, you all get the same pay. Right? Somebody even that brought that up because they were asking, what if somebody unalived themselves? And I was making the point to say, well, even if they do, if somebody can get it right, even at the end, that's for y'all to decide. I don't have a heaven or hell to put anybody in. But he says, even the person that might get it right at their deathbed, at their 11th hour, still go ahead and they can still get paid. They can still get in. It's not an excuse to not labor, especially it said there were certain ones who were laborers, they were ready to go, and others who just happened to be around, or others that they had to go search for, right? So there's different levels. But those of us who know better still put in the work, but don't be upset, don't covet it when somebody gets a reward and you're sitting up there, because we talked about this yesterday. To covet doesn't necessarily only mean to want what somebody has that you don't have. Sometimes to covet something can literally mean that you want something that not only somebody else has, you want something or something that somebody else has that you don't have. It can mean that you want something, or you're mad that somebody got what you got. You still covet it. You're like, how can they have what I have? I put in this work and I did this, and you can be jealous. You can covet over certain things, right? But then after that, he says, what? For many are called, few are chosen. The word called is kletos. The word chosen is ekletos. The word called says that you are invited. The word chosen means that even that you can be invited by many different things, but if you're chosen by the master, right? If the master not only invited you, but he chose you, he went out and looked for you, he agreed to the payment with you, then you should be accepting what you were chosen for. How you doing, Brother Charles? How you doing, Creed? So when we learned that, we said it hits different, right? It feels different than what you had. Statistically, you knew the verse, many are called, few are chosen, but it hits different when you can feel it. See, now we're talking about many are called, few are chosen. It's saying that many are called, few are chosen. So don't get upset that you accepted the call and to what you were chosen to do. Many people could have been called and not, right? Few were chosen. Just because everybody gets the same payment doesn't mean you weren't chosen. There's a different mindset behind it now, right? It feels different. Statistically, I know, I'm aware of what the verse says, but when it feels different, when I live different, when I put it within context, it means something different. Or like when people say in Matthew chapter 13, I think it's Matthew 13, maybe it's 43 and 44 or 44 and 45, somewhere around there. Matthew chapter 13, where it describes that the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that's hidden in the field. Right. And when the person found it, for the joy thereof, he sold everything he had so that he could own the field. Right. And a lot of people don't catch that. People just go, oh, the treasure, the kingdom of heaven is the treasure. And you try to take the treasure out of the field. But if you don't own the field and you try to take a treasure out of it, then you are a thief. Right. When pirates and all that stuff that you like to read those stories and go through those things. Right. When pirates saw treasure, or when they got treasure, they would hide it sometimes, right? And if you went looking for the treasure, you were a thief. You had to find it, you had to hide, you had to take it, you had to not be caught. And then you would try to hide the fact that you got it so nobody would be aware that you got it. Stuff like the Count of Monte Cristo, if you read that book or if you've seen movies and stuff like that, that's what we're talking about, right? That somebody has to steal the Count of Monte Cristo. Somebody had found out where the treasure was, and he had to go and he had to hide it from everybody. He was also trying to hide who he was, but he had to hide the fact that he found it, and he couldn't let everybody know he found it. How you doing, Brooklyn Zone? How you doing, Just Jay? Shalom to everybody coming on. Right. So when it says you find the treasure in the middle of the field, he sold everything he had, not to get the treasure, because he could have took the treasure. You found the treasure, but it said when he found the treasure, he put it back. It said he hid it where it was again, because it's not his yet. And then he sold everything to buy the land, When he bought the land, then everything that was on the land was his, including the treasure. Because when you get the treasure, you get the land too. But a lot of people just want the treasure, but you get the treasure and you have no place for the treasure. You got to hide the treasure. You got to hide who you are. But when you have ownership, if you will, then you have the land. You can reside where the land is, and you can put the treasure wherever you want. You can spend it however you want, because when you got the land, everything on the land was yours. Such is the kingdom of heaven. Don't just be excited about saying you got a treasure, right? But you can't live it every day and feel this thing. Statistically, you can have the treasure and know where it is, but still not technically have access to it because you are a thief. You are trying to steal things from the kingdom rather than making sure that you are owning what the kingdom is in, or getting the principles that the kingdom belongs in, or making sure certain things are always in your heart. Right? We live bad principles, but we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but before we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. We have a bad stuff when it comes to principalities. Principalities, when you look that word up, it's talking about kingdom origin. How you doing, Blue? Thanks for being on. It's talking about kingdom origin, or kingdom, or it's talking about origin or kingdom, or put it together, kingdom origin. So principality, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. The problem is we don't have the principle together. Make sure that you take accountability for the things that the kingdom is in, and then the kingdom belongs to you. How you doing, Kim Lisa? Welcome back. You catch that? Make sure you take accountability for what the kingdom is in, and what is around it, and the territory of the kingdom. And then if you're in the territory of the kingdom, then the treasure belongs to you anyway. Make sure you take care of the temple. If you take care of the temple, then the kingdom of heaven that's in you belongs to you anyways. That's why when the paradigm is being shifted at the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, verse 3 declares that even those that are poor in spirit, you are blessed. Why? Because the kingdom of heaven belongs to you. Why? Because at least you're coming to the territory. Once again, you're coming to the domain. It is a king's domain. It is a kingdom. And how you doing, Tracy? Tracy Williams. We got a couple Tracy's on, right? It's a kingdom. It's a king's domain. If I'm in the domain, then the treasure is something that I participate in, because the kingdom is supposed to be called a commonwealth. You're used to states, but there are not technically 50 states or 50 countries, right? There are 50 countries because the state is a country. But see, the state of Virginia is not a state. It is a commonwealth because it's still connected to a kingdom. George Washington was a slave owner in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He was a king, as much as they want to tell you he wasn't. In capitalism, he or she that has the capital, they are kings. The owner of a corporation, they are a owner of the corporation. The corporation is considered to be a person. It's an artificial person, but it's a person. And anybody who's part of that body, any corporation you work for, you are part of a body. Any body of believers in that corporation, right, you are supposed to be taken care of for what you give, because it's supposed to be a commonwealth, right? So even though the owner is over everything, you're only dealing, you're right. Even though the owner is over the company, he has to take care of all the members of the body, or she has to take care of all the owners of the body. You see that? This is the mindset, but we don't have the right mindset. You're coming with the wrong emotion, like we were talking about earlier. And therefore, since you have the wrong emotion, it's getting you the wrong feelings. And because you have the wrong feelings, your mood is messed up. I ain't doing, Sister Helen. And because your mood is messed up, now you don't have the right effort or energy to put into developing habits that should become culture, or should continue proper culture. See, certain things that you should feel come because I live it. You can't tell me racism doesn't exist, because I feel it. Somebody says that's when they have to hit you with facts over feelings. The statistic shows this. No. I've seen brothers get shot because of the color of their skin. I've seen a little boy with a toy gun gets shot by police officers, and they say that he was a threat. I've seen in the same community where that happened, somebody have a knife and be running at the police officer and trying to stab at him, and the police officer falling on their back, trying their best not to harm an adult. I've seen it. You can tell me all day long that what I'm seeing is not real, what I'm feeling is not real, but what I live is what I live. I know what it is to walk down the street and have the haircut and have the clean shaven face, or at least, somewhat clean shaven face, but have the shape up and all that. I know what it is to walk down the street and have the 3-piece suit on and be living a 6-figure lifestyle and have black women and white women running to the other side of the street because I'm a 6'5.5" black man. Doesn't matter what I have on. Doesn't matter how much more money I might make. Doesn't matter how better a situation I might live in. Doesn't even matter, because I've seen, because racism is what ISM makes it a system based off of what? Race. Race is not a color as much as race is a competition. It became about color when they started saying they needed people of color to do things in the sun that other people could not do. And my people still feel it because a lot of us have not gone through therapy. See, for a lot of you, the reason why you listen every day is because this is therapeutic. How you doing, R. Watson? Why? Because we have trauma, and we don't talk about trauma, how we feel. A lot of you keep going to these so-called psychologists in the world who keep trying to tell you about statistics rather than saying, how do you feel? You know something that a lot of men don't get, but they need to get every day? They need to hear somebody ask them, how do you feel today? How do you feel today? How are you doing, bro? I love you, brother. Shoot, even you can hear his police siren or whatever it is, ambulatory, I don't know what it is. But even when you hear that, there's something that happens to some of us where we hear that we feel a certain way. You can give me the statistics, but there's not statistics to be able to show you what happens to us when we feel. I never had to tell my son, right, that police officers look at you a certain way. But my son knows when he sees a police officer, or he's been in the car with me when he's seen a police officer show up and trying to get us on something, and he's seen that his dad has had to switch modes real quick, especially having his son in the car, and he's had to see his father do certain things. That's not something that shows up in a statistic, but that's a feeling that a lot of brothers in here can go ahead and say that they know what that is. Right? I, as a man of my diaspora, can tell you specifically that I have a wife that loves to forage and stuff, and we'll forage and this and that. But my wife, she'll forage, and she has more because she's a woman. And I'm not saying that she's not mistreated, but you hear what I'm saying? Because she's a woman, she might start foraging and stuff. And the first thing I start looking for, is there a trespassing sign? Are we allowed to forage here? Is this all right? You know why? Because if something happens, they coming for me. Ask me how I know. How you doing, Sister Judith? How you doing, Warren? I'm just trying to tell you, you can talk a great game about the statistics, but how I feel is how I feel, because my feeling, I'm trying to tell you, what I feel, sorry, let me say it the way we have it in the theme. I feel what is not statistical. Not everything that I feel shows up in a stat. Show me the statistics for the love of Yah. I'm not saying that there's no manifestation, but show me the statistics that let you know that you have felt the warmth of the Most High. Explain to me that feeling that you get when you worship. Can you write it out? I mean, you can try to explain it, but you always feel like you're falling short, don't you? Because you get into an eternal place to where what you can write out, even if I could statistically write it out, it couldn't even, it would be too much to explain. The Bible says it like this. I believe it's John, Yohanan, I believe it's John, who says that if I were to try, he said, I didn't write this so that you would have statistics, that you would have the history of Yeshua. What he said is, I wrote this so that you would know what we felt. He said, I wrote this so that you would believe. He said, if I tried to write out everything that the Messiah did, he said, the world, he said, if everybody tried to write out all the stuff that the Messiah actually did, he said, the world would not have enough space. The earth would not have enough space to contain what it is that he did. He said, however, I didn't write this so that you would know everything, because we couldn't begin to even write. It's not humanly possible to write out everything he did. He said, but what we can do is write out enough that you would believe. We know in part, but one day when I see his face, see, that's a feeling that I have. See, I have statistics, but statistics only get me to a dark a dark glass, a dim glass, or you've seen those painted glasses, right? Those stained glasses, if you will. You can see they're pretty and everything. You can see through them somewhat. You can even see a lot, but you don't have clear vision, do you? Statistics get you to a certain point, but there comes a feeling. Up here comes science, because people try to separate science from belief system or from spirituality. You ready? Watch this. Watch this. You can believe all day, every day in certain things. Some of you believe that there's neutrons, but neutrons are a theory. There's no evidence that there's a neutron. Neutrinos are a theory to back up the theory of neutrons, but there's no evidence that there's a neutrino. They used to believe that the atom was the smallest particle. Now there's something called subatomic particles. And they still can't explain those. But they have a what? They have a belief, they have a faith. They keep telling you about a Big Bang, but they can't tell you that there was actually a Big Bang. They tell it to you, but it's hyper theoretical. There is no evidence. They cannot scientifically prove it. They cannot do an experiment to prove it. And every time that they say we've got a handle on something, they realize they don't have a handle on it. But they have a belief in what they do. Even if the belief has been disproven, they at least use part of the belief, knowing that the belief is not holy, it's not holistic. They feel it, even if they don't have the stats. Amen. They feel it. How you doing, the real Sergo? How you doing, King Raj? They feel. You can tell me all days and that. Watch this. Dark matter. Yes, there's something out there. There's some dark matter, but they can't prove that it exists, but they feel it. They have a feeling. They have a theory. Stop letting people make you believe that statistics are the only thing that drives you. This comes from a Western place to where basically when they say statistics, right, the Western mindset, when they say statistics, what they're saying is what we are willing to say we will say is all right. Yet they feel their own lies, for real, right? That's what they're saying, is that we believe, we have put our stamp of approval on this. We say this is real, so we'll go ahead and let you go with that. But when we say it's not real, it's not statistical. That's what they're doing. You said their newest telescope has disproved their model of the universe. Oh, yeah. And they're going to have another one that's going to disprove that one and that one and that one and that one, right? They told you that the end of the universe was just some little white mass and something. So that's the end of the universe, even though they can't see past it. And they keep telling you that the speed of light is something that should be a variable. By the way, if you're looking at something and the speed of light, if something's billions of light years away, which we don't even know if it is, but that's what they're telling you. So if they say it's billions of light years away, watch this. If it's billions of light years away, could light have bent before it got to you? Or could there have been a planet that was in the way? Or if that was what it looked like billions of years ago, does that mean, right, billions of light years, which means it could be trillions, zillions, I don't even know, quadrillions, I don't even know what the equated to in actual years. But that means that more than likely doesn't even look like that anymore. And they're saying that it's expanding, it's moving. If you look at it, the further away we get, everything, the further away it gets from a certain point, it expands. So that must be where everything exploded from. But here's the wild part for you. That's not how explosions work, do they? Can we see, we got to sometimes allow our feelings, our nature, our natural intuition, our natural inclination. Sometimes we got to allow this feeling to be like, yo, hold up, that don't even feel right. What do I mean by that? What you saying, Kofi? What do you mean it don't feel right? And then after this, I'm gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna make sure I get a charger for the MacBook, or else I'm gonna lose y'all on YouTube. But watch this. You're telling me all this stuff, right? And you're telling me there was a Big Bang, there was an explosion. And we can tell there was an explosion because everything's closer together. And then where everything's closer together, it starts to expand. I've been around an explosion before. I've been around an implosion. Now, implosion is a little different, but I've been around some explosions before. If you're around, if an explosion happens, what is at the center of the explosion? If I were to take bomb, whatever you've seen on the movies, right? Throw it. What do you think is going to be? What do you think is going to happen? What's going to be where the explosion takes place? Nothing. and then around it. But that's not what they say. They say that everything's close together, and then they supposedly say everything spreads apart, although they'll admit to you that they can't track all the stars and they haven't seen all the stars. But that's what they say. So if there's a big bang, things would not be close together. If there was an explosion, things would be apart. So then that's when they had to change the model. They had to then say, well, maybe there was a collision and then things went their way. Okay, so there was a collision, but if there's a collision, if cars collide, what happens? Okay, they stay in the same place. How many particles there's particles that'll fly off, but it's not going to be more particles away than what's there. Because here's also another thing that they have to find something to keep changing up. Because then you tell me about matter, and that matter has always turned to energy. Energy has always turned to matter, and there's no such thing as new energy or new matter. This is why people who keep talking about that we're only energy, you got to be careful, because see, energy has to be created for there to be more and more and more and more. There's some people that would try to teach you and I didn't say everybody, but some people that would try to teach you and I. This is why you got to be careful too about culture, even in science. There's different cultural ways of applying science, right? But there's a lot of people that would tell you that, hey, everything that existed was already in something smaller than a period at one point. They had to change that, but that's what they used to say the Big Bang was. At one point, if you go through all the stuff, and I know it wasn't originally called the Big Bang, that was from radio show and all that stuff, but you know what I'm talking about. And what they used to say was the Big Bang actually was like the size of the universe, and the universe somehow exploded and became the universe. And they said that doesn't make sense. So they said, okay, we'll say that the Big Bang was like the size of the Milky Way, exploding, and then everything came. But then they said that doesn't make sense. They said, then let's say, okay, well, the Big Bang was the size of our solar system, and then everything came up. And they said that didn't make sense. Then they said, okay, well, let's say the Big Bang was like the size of the sun, the size of the earth, then it was the size of like a period. Then it was nothing. From nothing came something. But they said, no, that sounds too much like Bible. We don't believe in the Bible, because then that means we have to start admitting there's a creator. So then they had to come up with a different module. All of it keeps changing. Yeah, that blast radius, right? All of it keeps changing. But they still have a feeling that what they keep making up, eventually something they make up is going to click. They keep saying stuff like quantum physics. Yeah, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's one that's here to tell you quantum physics is the greatest theory, and there hasn't been one thing that quantum physics hasn't been able to explain. Quantum physics has not taught you anything about a black hole, about stars being created, about how the sun is still being able to take care of itself. You're still using theories. But they got a feeling. So if your feelings are all right, then your stats are based off of feelings. If your stats are based off of feelings, I might as well look at that feeling of the kingdom in me, the Holy Spirit in me, my spirit, my soul, my flesh, having the experience, and look at that as something that is tangent. And I want it to be pungent, as far as it to be able to have the sweet smelling savor to the Most High's nostrils, who put this all together in the first place. How you doing, Sister Patricia? I'm sorry, Sister Nadine. Be careful who you listen to, and they corrupt your character. Yeah. So you gotta be in position to have that conversation. To have a conversation with somebody and make it a point to represent your feelings. And it's okay that what you feel, because you live it, is just as valid as what somebody writes down because they feel it. Did you catch that? What you feel, because your statistics are basically right. You see statistics and you live a certain way, and you felt the power of Yah in your life, right? And they write out statistics based off of how they feel, right? Why is one better than the other? If you can represent your feeling, your stats are based off of your feelings. Why do they lift up Sir Isaac Newton the way that they lift him up? Because Sir Isaac Newton is supposed to be somebody that helped him to get away from having to be under Yah. And they teach you stuff that's not even true. How you doing, Tamaya? They teach you stuff that's not even true. Matter of fact, hold on one second. Like I said, I don't want to lose everybody on YouTube. I'm going to go get something, make sure that we can charge this device. I'm going to be right back. Salah, let's put a Salah right there. Give me like a minute, okay? Can y'all give me a minute? Hopefully you can give me a minute. People be leaving, but we're going to get right to it. If somebody can remind me of where we're at, just in case I forget, we're going to get ready to go into, I just started talking about Oh, we're going to talk about what is the term? I'm missing it. Well, we're going to talk about basically why we believe that um, we're going to talk about the belief of the solar system and where the modern belief of the solar system came from. How you doing, Iron Grit? So if y'all can give me literally just a minute, I'm gonna go upstairs. I'm gonna go get something to make sure that we charge so that we don't lose everybody on YouTube, and we're gonna keep on going. Okay? I'll be right back. All right. Give me a second. Make sure that this device is charging correctly. And we can go ahead and get into this. Make sure. Okay. Amen. All right. All righty. Thank you guys for your patience. So where are we at? Solar system. Solar system. There's a certain word I'm looking for. Oh, cosmology. That's what I was trying to get into. The cosmology. Cosmology. So why is it that you look at a global cosmology rather than a biblical cosmology? The cosmos with a C, we're talking about. Cosmos with a K means system. So if you see, like for Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, the word world with a K, cosmos with a K means a system, right? But if you're talking about cosmos with a C, you're talking about the physical, okay? So we're going to talk about cosmology real quick, the solar system. And why do you have a global cosmology? So a lot of people believe that you have a global cosmology, statistics, and they change stuff up because they want you to believe that everybody who made anything that was of value believed that the earth was round, that people who were dumb, or what they call stupid, dumb means really you can't speak, but only stupid people or people that were not as educated believed that the earth was flat and that everything revolved around the earth. That's what they want you to believe, right? Because there's people who have a certain religious belief system that want you to go by that belief system, right? It's a religious belief system whether you like it or not. And how you doing, Big Brother Thomas, if I didn't say so already, right? But here's the deal. A lot of people don't tell you that the reason why the pyramids were able to be built the way they were built was because that they believed that the earth was flat and that the sun went around the earth. Quiet as kept. They say we don't even know not only how they built pyramids, but we don't know how they built it to where they could literally mirror the constellations, because they believed they had a cosmology in which they believed that those constellations were going to always be in those places based off of the sun going around the earth and the stars moving. Now, somebody says this is wild, that doesn't make sense, you're just making stuff up, right? However, if you study, there's no Kemetic writings that tell you that the earth is round. And thank you for that, King Raj, I see you, right? And yeah, because their ancestors didn't do it, but they're saying that they believe in something different, and they're trying to change even what their ancestors believed, and therefore trying to change what your ancestors believe. They have to get you to go into the stuff, but they can't mimic what they did because our people did things based off of a different feeling, a different culture, a different belief, a different emotion, a different feeling. And how you doing? I don't know if it's IGMT or LGMT. 971, thanks for being part of the community. They had a different way of feeling things through, right? Like they want you to believe, for example, and I'm getting a little off, I'm come right back to the cosmology, but they want you to believe, oh, look at this. We can finally, women can go ahead and they can pee on the stick and they can tell if they're pregnant or not. Do you not know that in Kemet and in Kush and in Israel and many other places that women, our people, we literally knew that women, we would plant certain types of vegetation and we would have it set up to where our women could urinate on the plants. They could urinate on two different types of plants, and we would give it a little bit, and then the plant would actually, the soil, I think around the plant, would turn colors. And if it turned a certain color, you were right. And if the plant that turned the color was one or the other, we would know if it was a boy or a girl. But they would have you believe that that's something that we didn't have the ability to do. Or they keep talking about the first brain surgeon to do blah, blah. Do you not know that you were doing brain surgery 4,000 years before Christ? Let's say 3,000 to be safe. Now, were we as advanced in all surgeries and things like that? No. Am I saying we could do some of the brain surgery we can do that? No, but we're not going to pretend like we never did any. We were embalming people. And the people that we embalmed, they still study those people. I don't think they should have been messing with people's graves, but it is what it is at this point. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So, but we can still study people and still look at their hair and still look at their features and still look at what they did and still look at some of their stuff that was even put in jars around them that were part of their body. And its stuff is still in place. Their bodies are kept so well that we were able to tell that there were pharaohs that had to be traveling to the New World. Or at least at some point, the world had to be one continent together before it split. We can tell this because people in Kemet have stuff that doesn't grow in Kemet, like the coca plant, cocaine. But they had it in their body, which means that they had to be traveling the world. But you hear somebody else tell it, we didn't have anything, right? So this is, once again, we have to start going off of what we live, what we did, and what we feel, even our DNA memory, because it doesn't match. Even your story, his story, doesn't match our story. Their statistics don't even make sense. They told you that you were nothing. Now they want to tell you that you don't know about Kemet. It's interesting. They want to tell all this stuff about Cleopatra and all that stuff that came up. And you have Arabic people that made it a point to say, I'm going to tell you about Cleopatra. And Cleopatra's she's not you, she's Egyptian and blah, blah. First of all, Cleopatra was not Egyptian because it wasn't, Cleopatra was Egyptian, but Egypt is not dealing with Kemet. Kemet is before Egypt. Egypt is when you're starting to deal with Ptolemaic dynasty. Ptolemy was somebody who was under Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, who, by the way, was mixed at least. You would have probably considered him to be a person of color because if you look at his father, Philip of Macedonia, his father was a man of color. A lot of people don't know that about what you call Greeks today, because not all Greek was not a country always, right? So you have many different city-states, many different branches or tribes of people over there, right? But if you look at Philip of Macedonia was a person of color. So his son more than likely was a person of color, right? But nevertheless, Alexander the Great, he passes away. He had 4 generals. It's described to you in Daniel chapter 7 as the leopard that has 4 heads, right? You look at Babylon, right? The lion with 4 wings. You look at the Medes and the Persians, the bear who has the hunch in its back and has the bone in its mouth, the ribs in its mouth. You have then the Greeks. The Greeks who are represented as a leopard, swift, with 4 heads. And what happens is Alexander the Great, he had power, but he was somebody who was not necessarily attracted to women just because he's a person of color. That's why we say this stuff is a spirit. Don't get it twisted. You got to look at the culture, not the skin color, the culture, right? How you doing, Sister Aliens? And so he when he passed away, he didn't have an heir. At least so we think. We're pretty sure he didn't have the heir. Maybe he did, but more than likely he didn't have the heir because he had a wife and title, but he actually loved a male. Right? So when he passed away, he had no heir. So the 4 generals that were with him split up his kingdom into 4, the 4 heads in Daniel 7. And when they split up his kingdom, guess what? They split up as well. When they split up his kingdom, they split up the power. And Egypt was what Ptolemy got. And Ptolemy actually then went and stole his body and brought it to Egypt. So somewhere in Egypt, supposedly, is Alexander the Great's body, right? But he went down, and so Ptolemy is a Greek. He's a person of color, but he's a Greek. He's not an Israelite. Ptolemy is not an African. He is not Kemetic. He is Greek, right? But he was not. But he was not what you could consider now to be Arabic. The word Arabic used to just mean people that were nomadic. Now you think Arabic of people as a people, but Arabic meant nomadic, right? But these people that were nomadic, these Arabic people specifically that came into Egypt now, that have power in Egypt now, they're not the people of Ptolemy. They would actually after the Ptolemaic dynasty was taken over by Rome, then Rome would lose to who is now over there, the Arabic people who are now over there, right? People like even come from what's his face? The guy who we know about, Saladin, who fought in the Crusades, right? You would see Egypt from those people, and those people are now the people that are in Egypt today. So that's why they don't upkeep the pyramids. That's why they don't upkeep the Sphinx. That's why they don't really care about that stuff, because it's not their culture. They don't even consider themselves to be part of Kush, Ethiopia, because they're not the same people. The people who are Kemetic that live in Egypt, they are the people who built those things. So you keep going to the people talking about, we don't know how they built this and how they built that. And the people of Kemet are like, you know, if they're not going to listen to us, we should probably keep it a secret anyways. These people are colonizers. They don't care about us. They don't worry about how we feel. They're going to do statistics, whatever, let them do what they do, right? So, but you got to realize it's different. So when you talk about Cleopatra, she was not Arabic. She was not white, but she was not Kemetic. She was Greek. And if you don't believe that, by the way, go look up some cartoons that people have been putting up now to tell the truth about those people in the movie 300 that you saw. King Leonidas, he had locks. He was a brother. In the movie, they gave you whatever that dude's name is. But King Leonidas, he had locks. When he went to battle, he had locks. Hey, Judy the Beauty, how you doing? Right? He had locks. So that means that we know what time it is, right? We know who the Spartans were. We know who a lot of these Greek people were, what they looked like, at least as far as their hair and probably their color. And it didn't say he had locks it didn't say he had nice braids or this and that. It didn't say his hair was just matted. It said his hair locked. How you doing, love, peace, blessings? So people are like, we don't know how they did this in Kemet, but the people of Kemet believed in cosmology, but as far as the original cosmology. Matter of fact, if you don't believe that, there's something that you guys use today. What do you think is a Kemetic word that you guys use every day to determine what time it is? You use a word every day that you don't even think that comes from Kemet, but it's Kemetic. What's a word you think? Think about time. What's a word that you use all the time that's Kemetic? Okay, not hour. A particular hour, though. Not o'clock, a particular hour. Noon. Amen, babe. Yep, noon. Noon. There was a Netcher named Noon. And when she walked around, the sun would be on her head. So when the sun rose in the east, they were like, noon's coming, she's moving. And then noon would get above their head. They would say it's noonday, if you will. And then when she kept going past, right, then that would be what? That would be afternoon. And then when she left, that was the evening. And then you waited the next day for her to come up. So you would see noon rise. As noon rose, you realized that she was on the move again. And then they started realizing noon moves all the time. This is their belief system. Noon keeps moving. So if we just go ahead and calculate our day according to her movement, it will be all right. And then they started thinking to themselves, well, wait a minute, the moon seems to be moving around us like noon does as well. So if noon is reflecting, so maybe noon is reflecting off of the moon. But they would have you tell you today that we have no clue how they wrote. No, we know how they wrote. If you look at their belief system, how they feel about things, and stop listening to somebody else's statistics, the people there tell you why they operated in what they operated in. But they would have you believe that everybody just thought the earth was round. The people of Kemet must have been ahead of time and they knew that the earth was round. How did they do that? They didn't do that. And I'm not here to argue people's belief system as far as the Anunnaki and all that stuff. I'm just trying to tell you, they would have you believe that aliens had to come down, because the reason that whole thing started was because every time that they found something that they can't explain that we did, they told you it was because an alien had to do it. Because the word alien, if you don't realize, the word alien means foreigner. So at first, when they were saying it was alien back in the day, they were just saying these foreigners did it, but it can't be the foreigners we thought, because we think these foreigners are black and they stupid. But then the word alien now has become, you think they got to come from outside the planet. So here you are arguing about, and I'm not here once again, I don't know if there's aliens. Some of the stuff about Anunnaki seems like it makes some sense. Some of the stuff, it seems like people are making stuff up. Some of the stuff that people are trying to pull from the book of Enoch to prove it, I can see it. Some of the stuff, it doesn't necessarily make sense to me, right? I don't have a clue. I don't have a dog in that fight. I'm not ready to even talk about that. I'm just being honest. I keep trying to, but I can't find anything that I can bring before you guys that I think is relevant as far as I being able to teach you something and give something that I know is credible and is not coming, is coming from a place that we can say specifically, we know this to be a fact, right? But one of the things that I can tell you is that people started saying that aliens had to make stuff because they didn't believe that you had the ability, that you were not fearfully and wonderfully made. Only they were. You know, this is the white man's burden we're talking about. This is lost cause rhetoric we're talking about. This is the doctrine of discovery we're talking about. This is evolution we're talking about. This is manifest destiny. For those of you who didn't get the evolution reference, by the way. Matter of fact, give me a second. Hold on. Give me a second. Give me a second, y'all. Sorry. Okay. All right. So a lot of people don't know. Wait a minute. What's going on here? Oh, wait a minute. I'm not even in. Huh. I'm bad. I'm thinking had people were looking at me. I didn't got out of the app. Sorry, y'all. Okay, let me pull this up. Hold on. Sorry about that. So I was trying to find this real quick, and I messed up and got out of the app. When I was mentioning this stuff, a lot of people don't know. For example, this stuff is centered around stuff, and you're feeling a certain way and not realizing that their statistics are nonsensical. But this is where the statistics come from. So first and foremost, I was talking about the doctrine of discovery. That was something that the Pope put in place in 1453. The Pope put the doctrine of discovery in place in 1453. 1452. And it didn't become official to 1493. What is the doctrine of discovery? Doctrine of discovery says that if we find your land and we don't find a white Christian male on it. Oh, would you say by land to sea? I need to read Galatians chapter 3, verse 28, where it says there's no race in Christ. Well, first of all, it doesn't say there's no race in Christ, right? Because they didn't use the word race yet. But if you allow me to go ahead and tell you where the word race comes from, we can talk about that. And at the end of the day, I think you should also read Romans chapter 11. Have you ever read Romans 11? Have you ever read Revelation chapter 7? Are you still there? It's interesting. People just drop the stuff in and they don't read the Bible, right? Read your Bible to bless you. But the Bible doesn't say that you're getting into heaven just because you're an Israelite or just because you're black or just because you're white. I totally agree with you on that. But if you were to read Romans chapter 11, what would he find? He would find there in Romans chapter 11 that the Bible specifically, expressly says that just because Israel has messed up doesn't mean that Israel is not in the same position she's always supposed to have been in. Elohim forbid. But it also talks about that others would be grafted in. And it talks about the fact that because we weren't doing what we were supposed to do, that we've been provoked to jealousy by watching other people come into stuff that we should have had access to for ourselves the whole time. And now when we're grafted back in with those that are grafted in as well, we should all become one with the same tree that was Israel the whole time. But anyways, the reason why people like that think like that is this, what I'm telling you now. Doctrine of discovery. 1453. I'm going to get back and we're going to sew up cosmology and we're going to get out your way, right? Doctrine of Discovery, 1452. 1493, the Doctrine of Discovery is something that's put in place for real. It means that if you weren't a white Christian male, according to Roman Catholicism, that means if we find your country, there's no white Christian males on there, we get to say we discovered it, because those are the only people that matter. Right? Now, as much as he would tell you, I would agree with you, by the way, that race is not an indicator of what you're supposed to be, what you call race. And we're going to get into that in just a second. If that person's still on, they're probably muted at this point. But they made it a point to say that if we find your lands and there's no white Christian males, we get to do that. Now, why did that become official, even though it was something they were doing since 1452? Why did it only become official in 1493? Because in 1482 or so, at least, Christopher Columbus is traveling around with other people who are African descent, and they keep talking about this land of Azeroth, which, if you know about 2nd Esther chapter 13, verses 40 through 45, that's where Israelites left when they left the Northern Kingdom. Right. But then after that, what do we see? What do we discover? People are seeing stuff. And then he's traveling around with them. In 1491, Queen Isabel and her husband, Ferdinand, finally are able to defeat the last great Moorish king, and Spain finally becomes a country for the first time. And therefore, they go to the Pope and they ask if they can make slaves of the people who once used to be over the land that they're coming over. These people who are considered to be Negroes, Sephardic Jews, who are known that go right. And if we look at Negro land, same people. And the Pope says, sure, no problem. So they start even stuff like the Spanish Inquisition and stuff later on after that. And they go after the Sephardic Jews, changing them. And then they start looking for anybody else who was in league with these Sephardic Jews. If you just go read, it's interesting. People won't read, but we'll talk, right? So if that person were going to read that, but then also too, if you look at that, then in 1492, Christopher Columbus, Cristobal de Colon, he sells the ocean blue, and he comes over with a Hebrew interpreter looking for the land of Azeroth. And they discover that these people make the same weapons that people who are Negroes, Sephardic Jews, in West Africa and North Africa and in Spain, using the same weapons, same metallurgy. They're freaked out by this, but they say, okay, cool, we must have found the land of Azeroth. And they go enslave these people. In 1493, when they go back over to enslave them, to make it official that wherever non-white, or if you're not a white Christian male, wherever we go, that land belongs to us, the Roman Catholics. And then eventually people started using that same doctrine of discovery in their own countries when they started doing it on their own. And they always did it in the name of Jesus. So, yes, Yahushua is not worried about your race, so to speak. But people who believe in Jesus, that's where you come from. Be mad about it all day, but that's why we got to know. See, truth separates. Yeah, the culture is real. So, doctrine of discovery, real, right? The lost cause rhetoric. Hey, people left and seceded from the South and wrote that the reason that they left the South was because they believed that slavery was both beneficial not only to the bond, but the free. That God had allowed, that's what they believed. God himself allowed for slavery to happen because it benefited the slave. Like you hear people talk about today. Why you guys talk so much about Africa? If it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have this American money, and you wouldn't have this, and you wouldn't have that. Guess where that comes from? What culture do you think that is? Something else called the white man's burden. The white man's burden literally is a doctrine that was out there for centuries now that basically says that, hey, we don't really want to treat people bad, but at the end of the day, we've got to do it because it's our burden to make sure everybody acts like white men. What about manifest destiny? Manifest destiny that said that, hey, it is God's prerogative that we would make sure that we take over everything from the East Coast of the Americas over to the West Coast. They did it in the United States of America, Canada, Mexico, wherever you want to talk about. Then we get into something called evolution. Yeah, their God allowed that behavior. Not only allowed it, Brother Vincent, he wanted them straight up to do it. He commanded it. Look up Mormons and what Joseph Smith said and his belief system and how you got to be black. Nobody wants to talk about the culture that's influencing this Christianity thing going on. But then if we even be more honest, what about evolution? And then we'll finish with cosmology, and then I got to take my leave. I got stuff I got to do. Praise God. Thank you guys for being on with us today. What about evolution? Charles Darwin, who went to school, by the way, His parents paid for him to go to school for about a year and to mess around with different things. He kind of looked at microscopes and stuff, but he didn't go to school and get taught any science. But he actually went to school and got a degree, at least got his degree paid for, to be somebody who was a minister, a preacher. And he wrote a book that everybody loves to talk about as far as evolution. This is a preacher, by the way. This is a preached word. This is a religion. Okay? And in this religion, this book right here, and you see here, this is what, 1859 that this is written? It's called what? So you think it's just called, the theory of evolution. Now, this is not even the whole title of the book, but this is what the book is. It's The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection of the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life by Charles Darwin, Fellow of the Royal Geological and Linnean, etc. societies. Now, this means that royalty backed this up. The crown backed this up. Geological societies, people that said that they know how the earth operates and moves, back this up. And even people who were Linnaean. Now, who is Carl Linnaeus? Yeah, he believed in Jesus. Matter of fact, he was also somebody who was a lunatic. Lunatic means that you believe in worshiping the moon. So he believed in Ishtar or Easter. That's where you get Easter from, is people who are lunatics. Lunatics are not just crazy people. Lunatics were considered to be crazy, but they were called lunatics because they believed in lunar worship. They didn't believe in the lunar just to say this is where the month starts. No, they believed in lunar worship. Part of the Jesuit order. Come on, Big Brother Vargas, right? So we're talking about Linnaeus, Carl Linnaeus. We don't want to operate and be honest about it, but Carl Linnaeus was somebody who was the person who brought up races. At first, he didn't bring it up initially, but at first they were believed to be animal races. They said that animals competed against each other, so they raced against each other. So then they started saying they had races. Before they started talking about species, they had races. Then Carl Linnaeus came along and said that human beings had races, and he put them in order of white, red, yellow, black. He gave them Latin sounding names, of course, but because Latin means it's scientific. But he just gave them Latin sounding names, but he just basically put them in order of white people are the best. Then Native Americans seem to be a little better than that, or a little worse off, or worse off, but they're better than the other ones. And then Asian people, they're worse than them, but hey, they're not as bad as black people. That was his order. That was his list. That was his list. Say whatever you will, but that was his list. That's what he taught. And then Charles Darwin took that to the next level. And if you look again, once to the title, what is the title? It's The Origin of Species. So what's the origin? By means of natural selection. So everybody's origin comes from how nature selects it. Even when you hear people say we hold these truths to be self-evident, that's talking about natural selection. That all men are created equal. But what is a man? Well, watch this. Preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. It was not written for everybody. It was written so that we could talk about favored races. Favored means that there's races that deserve to be favored. So in the preservation of favored races, that means some races, just like some animals, natural selections is going to take them out. Well, some races, hey, it's just natural that they be taken out. That's what the book is about. Go read the book and you'll see that he breaks it down a bit more than just 4 races. He extends the list and says what animals the races come from and why white people are at the top and everybody else, depending on your whiteness, you're down further. And then depending on your redness and your yellowness and your blackness, you go further and further down the list. And if you read the book, he even uses the term races for us as people. And he also sometimes talks about us as what? Species, different species or races of human. So the person who keeps telling me you got to look at evolution to see that we all come from the same place, that's not what Charles Darwin taught. You said it's crazy how you learn manifest destiny when you were in school and they don't even teach it now. I don't even remember if they did teach manifest destiny when I was in school. They might have. I didn't like history class. I didn't like civics. I didn't like any of that when I was in school. Funny enough, strangely enough, right? But I'm just saying, so here you are now. Take all that and get back to what we were talking about as far as global cosmology. Because in a lot of you guys' heads, you think that global cosmology started. And no shade at you, because I used to think this, because this is what they taught us in school. We used to believe that that basically what we're taught in the Bible as far as Halakhah, right, firmament and all that stuff. We used to think that was just something that everybody believed, but science has shown us better, yada yada yada, and that the Roman Catholic Church, including stuff like what we call the Spanish Inquisition and other things, we used to believe that, oh, okay, well, those are just things that we just didn't know any better, but now we know, and it doesn't mean the Bible's not real. But watch this. Here's where the problem comes in. It wasn't who you think it was that got you into global cosmology. It was actually the Roman Catholic Church that started the process and this thing that you call global cosmology. I'll say it again. It was actually the Roman Catholic Church that started global cosmology. They hired somebody that basically lost his parents, and they raised him, and then they put him through school for 12 years. Didn't even get a degree, right? But like I said back then, a bachelor's degree. I know it's baccalaureate, but why do we call it a bachelor's degree as a nickname? Because a lot of bachelors would go to school, right, and they would just party. Maybe they would, and their parents or whoever's doing it might end up paying to where they finally, okay, you get a degree. But a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people didn't go to school to learn. They went to school because that's what you did as a bachelor. So they hired somebody, and I'm sorry, I'm losing. Matter of fact, hold on. Nicholas Copernicus, Nicolaitan doctrine, warned about. Nicholas Copernicus. Copernicus is basically, he's without parents. They make him a bishop after this, and they hire him, and they say, hey, we would like, the Pope says, hey, we would like for you, the reason we've been working with you and helping you to grow and doing some stuff, we would like for you to help us to create something as far as global cosmology. Why? Because they wanted people to start worshiping the sun. That's straight up. They wanted people to start worshiping the sun. They wanted Sunday to be the new day of worship. And so they wanted to take it away from Saturday being their seventh day, which was Shabbat or Sabbath, right? Even though it's not the Sabbath, but that's what they treated it as. They said, we wanted to start making Sunday the day of worship, but it's going to be difficult to do that unless we can show people why the sun is the most important thing. Is what they said, right? It's in Roman Catholic libraries, right? You can look this up for yourself. You can read about it. I'm not just coming up with something off the dome. Like, you can read books on it, right? So they hired him. Yeah, sun worship, right? By the way, if you know how the days of the week work, that you say you're speaking another language and you're worshiping gods, you just don't know it. You're worshiping deists, deities, gods, spirits, etc. So what does Sunday mean? Sunday is the day that you worship the sun. What is Monday worship? Monday is the day that you worship the moon. What is Tuesday? Tuesday is the day that you worship the god of war. What is Wednesday or Wednesday? Wednesday or Wednesday is the day that you worship Odin. What is Thursday? Thursday is the day that you worship Thor. What is Friday? Friday is the day that you worship Frida. That's Odin's wife. What is Saturday? Saturday is the day that you worship Saturn or Saturnalia, which is why people have such affection for Saturn and the rings and all that stuff, right? Saturn used to be a really big deal because Saturnalia is a really big deal, right? Winter solstice, all that, but they would celebrate winter solstice, a big thing for them every year, witchcraft and everything. They would celebrate it every week, getting them ready for Saturnalia, Saturday, right? So you're worshiping something that's not even, when you're saying these names, it's a holdover from worship. So they wanted everybody to start worshiping on Sunday. So they say, Nicholas Copernicus, you got to come up with something. Please come up with something to help us to be able to change what's going on, right? Nicholas Copernicus starts it. He writes a book, and then he doesn't feel great about what he's about to write. He kind of feels guilty about it. He feels like he's about to do something really perverted, even though he lives a pretty perverted life if you look up his life. But he's like, something about this. So he actually just doesn't want to do it anymore. He stops, and he's not going to put it out. And interesting enough, when he's not going to put it out, he all of a sudden becomes sick. And then he passes away. And while he's on his deathbed, not even passed away yet, the book starts going out. backed up by the Roman Catholic Church. And if you read his book, interestingly enough, they weren't even, I won't say smart enough, they were not aware enough, right? They were not even aware enough to say to themselves, we should take out the introduction, because in the introduction or whatever part of it was before he gets into the first chapter, he makes it a point to say, I kind of feel like I'm being pressured into putting this out there, and I doubt whether I should put this together or not. He puts it in the beginning of the book. So we know that he wasn't necessarily, feeling it. But it is what it is. The book goes out, and people begin to have these arguments now. It's coming from the Roman Catholic Church, saying the earth must be round and the sun must be the beginning of all things, so we can say that everything revolves around it. Therefore, God is the sun. This is why some of you even go into trying to call Jesus the S-U-N, and that's why he's the S-O-N, but you're conflating the wrong culture. You're thinking that's Kemetic culture, but that's not Kemetic. That's Roman Catholic. That's where you get the S-U-N as the S-O-N from, because they wanted everybody to believe that the sun was the center, not only of the earth, but the universe. Not the earth, but you know what I'm saying? The earth went around the sun. That's where that came from. And if you do more research, for those of you who are Lutheran, you might know this to be true. Martin Luther was against quite a few different things that the Roman Catholic Church was doing. He never left the Roman Catholic Church, but he spoke out against quite a few things. But also one thing that if you look for it, you'll see is that Martin Luther argued about this global cosmology. He said, what you're doing is dangerous, because if you change what the Most High says he made and how he made it, he says you're going to ultimately start unraveling people's faith in the Bible, because the Bible starts with creation. If we take away what Elohim did in creation, then everything else doesn't seem to be. If you can say this is how things were not created, you've messed everything else up. So even within their own culture, there was arguments going on. People were having big arguments about this. And you think this is something that, oh no, scientists came across and they just knew what it was. And, Galileo had to deal with oppression, and so-and-so had to deal with oppression, and so-and-so had to deal with oppression. Who's the one that made the Mona Lisa? What's his name? Leonardo da Vinci. He had to deal with this oppression. The church was always against it. The church were the people who started it, y'all. Their problem with Leonardo da Vinci wasn't because he was talking about global cosmology, if they were the ones that did it. But that's what you think. Matter of fact, if you do some research, you'll discover in the early 1900s that there were people getting locked up, teachers that were getting locked up. And you know what the teachers were getting locked up for? In the United States of America. I won't say all over the United States of America. That would be a lie. But still in the United States of America, there were still cities where teachers would get locked up for teaching bad things. And they were getting locked up not because they were teaching that the earth was flat, but they were getting locked up because they were teaching that the world was round. They would have you believe that in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, 1500s, 1400s, etc., that everybody just believed that the earth was round. But that's not the truth. I mean, you could talk about Leonardo da Vinci with Cesare Borgia. You could talk about Michelangelo with Cesare Borgia. You could talk about Machiavelli with Cesare Borgia. I mean, that's getting deeper. You on another level sometimes. Amen. But that's real though, right? So I'm just saying all that stuff was there, but that's why I say there's statistics. See, what we're talking about today. What's the theme for today? The theme for today was I feel what is not statistical. You got to get to a place where you live this, where you know your own culture, where you study certain things enough to where you can comprehend, right? You can comprehend what the word of Yah is saying. If you believe the word of Yah says that the earth, now I don't believe it necessarily be flat per se. And if you look at this, it's not even saying the earth is flat, right? But the earth is not necessarily the same way. Is it possible that the earth has something around it that could be spherical? Possibly, but even NASA tells you that everything you've ever seen about the universe, they tell you every single thing you've ever seen, they have virtually done something to it, which means that unless you've been there yourself, now there are people who say they've been not only in space, but been to the moon and all this other stuff. And but they tell you that every picture you've ever seen has been modified. That's every single, you got to believe. See, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them the first time. If they told you every single picture, watch this. If Neil Armstrong got off the little ship that is extremely small, if you've ever seen it before, it's extremely small, right? Smaller than what you would think it would be. And if he got off and there was a camera set up, either they lying to you about that's not the first time somebody got off the moon, right? Or that something was made up, right? I'm just saying. I'm not saying, they say that they put a steel bar on the top of it so that the flag would stand up, right? They put a steel bar on there knowing that the flag that they're going to put on there wasn't going to stand up. So they put it on there. But the flag, I'm just saying, look at some stuff, right? And not only look at, because people will say, well, yeah, of course, the less gravity and they'd be able to do this and they'd be able to do that. The gravity pull is different. Okay, cool. The problem is that if you look at other moon landings, they don't move the same way that Neil Armstrong and them did. Sometimes they bounce faster, which doesn't make sense if you got to go like this, right? Gravity doesn't get you, even if you bounce faster up, at some point you're going to come slowly down, but you got some where they're bouncing like this. You got some to where they're falling on their side and they literally pushing themselves up. And when they push themselves, so they're going straight up, they just flip right back. You got some stuff my wife and I were looking at to where people are now taking hair and they're putting gel in the hair and they're going upside down. And then they're making sure their hair floats up, but nobody hair floats up except one or two people, which means that obviously they got to be using gel. I'm just trying to tell you, look, that's a whole rabbit hole. I'm just saying at some point, people are giving you statistics and you're allowing these statistics that are based off of inaccuracies, right? At some point, we got to admit that our intuition at least has to be there. Yeah, the word Nasa means to deceive, right? Even NASA means to deceive, right? If you know Hebrew, if you know Paleo Hebrew, even it's the same word Nasa, Nun Samek Aleph. And if you put that together, Nasa is talking about something that it's got to perfect or it's got to be matured. It's a seed that's in thorny places, and it's something that's supposed to be a source or for the Father. So there's something imperfect that they planted a seed that you got to be able to look through thorny ground to get to, but the Father's going to be able to show us the deceit. That's what Nasa is really saying in our characters. So I'm just saying, like we said today, right? I feel what is not statistical. Let people get you caught up. And if you don't agree with their stats, then it's not real, yada, yada, yada. That's not how this works. Praise y'all. All right, praise y'all. Thank y'all for being on. Appreciate you, fam. We're going to go ahead and get ready to take our leave. If you're on TikTok, if you're on Facebook or YouTube coming over, if you want to go over to TikTok real quick, we're going to get ready to do our shout out. We'll do a brief version of it. If you've never done a shout out with us, feel free to go ahead and stick around. We believe that you'll enjoy it. And it's a way for you to catch up on different things that we do as a diaspora, not only virtually, but physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. For us, this is not just virtual, it's reality. So we know each other, we call each other, we check up on each other, we have meetups, all that stuff. And we appreciate you. We have, stuff like the prayer line, classes to help out with homeschooling. We have stuff that we do for men's meeting, women's meeting, classes, by the way, third quarters for those who are signed up is getting ready to start on the 28th. So not today, but next Monday, we'll be starting the classes. So prayerfully, we'll have you guys join us next Monday. We're signed up. If you'd like more information for that, let us know. We've been trying to reach out to people little by little and trying to get you guys, so you guys should get at least, Google Calendar invites pretty soon to make sure that you guys have all the information for that stuff. If you need us to work out with you as far as donations and all that, let us know and we'll work that out with you. But thank you all. We appreciate you. Once again, as I was saying earlier, keep my wife and I in prayer as we're going to get ready to be on the road quite a bit and finish some stuff up in personal walk. These next couple of months are going to be an extreme journey for us, but we praise Yah that He's with us in everything that we do. A lot of you are going through a lot. We're trying our best to help out as much as we can in a lot of situations. Please lift each other up in prayer. Keep calling each other. Keep connecting. Keep talking to each other. Today at 3:00 p.m. Eastern New York time, there will be French class. Thank you for everybody that was with us earlier for Early Rising Bible Study session. I'll be back with you guys later this evening for the live session. This Wednesday, we'll have a guest, my spiritual auntie, Prophetess Ayers, Carolyn Ayers. She might still say Jesus a couple times, things like that. But I promise you, if you listen to her long enough, you'll see her heart. Amen. I don't discriminate just because people say Jesus. I'm looking at their heart, and she is somebody who's changing and moving in certain things and growing. But she's part of the reason why I even got into some of the writing and stuff, and even some of the stuff we do with social media and stuff now. So when she comes on Wednesday on YouTube, and you'll be able to hear her on TikTok. I don't know if you'll be able to see her, but just ask that you be respectful. Amen. As we always are. I know y'all always are, but I'm just giving you a heads up when you hear. And if she says he hits you with a couple Jesus things or whatever, don't be scared away. All right. I'm not changing my stance. Right. But she's a great woman of Yah, and we're going to have her on Wednesday evening. Please check out and support Minister Tamara at 8 p.m. Eastern New York time. She'll be doing the evening session herself. On Thursday Rising, we have Thursday Rising prayer at 7 a.m. Eastern New York time. And then we'll have our normal session after that. On Friday, we'll have our live session, followed by at 12 p.m. Eastern New York time, Sister Judith, who will continue to teach us about raw food diet. So please, ma'am, please, sir, if you haven't caught up on that in no series and you haven't got the ingredients together and made sure you started sprouting your seeds and all that stuff to be able to go along with it. She does it on Thursday, so that basically by Friday, when she teaches on Friday at 12 Eastern, we can make sure that we have the stuff prepared in time for Shabbat. Whether you start Shabbat Friday at 6 or you do Shabbat on Saturday, you'll have your stuff prepared. But we'll have that. So look up for that. And on Wednesday, I skipped over Wednesday. Wednesday, we'll try our best. We'll probably be on the road. But prayerfully on Wednesday, we'll have Solomon's Kung Fu Club. So those children who come on for the Kung Fu Club, we'll have that homeschool stuff for you guys as well. That'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. If you want more information on all the stuff that we just talked about, if you want more information on the items that we just talked about or discussed, or even more things that we do, like coaching, marital coaching, ministers in your area, people that do meetups in your area, phone numbers that you can reach out to. Minister Sharon has like a grief coaching stuff that we do where people come on and they make they talk things through with each other and pray for each other and stuff like that. If you want more information, just stick around for the shout out on TikTok right after we do this dismissal. We once again give all praise and honor to the Most High. We give all praise and honor to him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. We thank you all for being on so much. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Hopefully you'll stick around for a little bit of the shout out, and you guys have a great day. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember, as always, Yashada'al, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. Peace. To those of you that are still with us, Aman, and thank you for being with us still.